No. No. No.
What did I just say? I was saying smart stuff. I was watching Adam Runs Everything, and I was like, basically, I'm like Adam. I'm like Mindy Runs Everything. But, like, I used to be received well, and now everyone is like, they really, like, hate it. I mean, like, people, like, seem to hate this Adam character, but I didn't used to get that response. No. And then I asked Sean, like, why would that be? Like, people didn't used to hate me for, like, dropping knowledge on them. And he was like, well, you come off as judgy. And I thought about that, and I was like, well, for someone to feel that they are judged, they have to first set apart the person that they feel is judging them as judge, which means they feel that they're separate from them. So things like elementary school, middle school, high school, things that are unifying factors, situations in which there is a unifying factor, I am better received. And then, like, once out of that, I'm seen as other. And I'm very much seen as other because, look at me, and did I go to college? No. Like, I'm not normal, and so people are not, like, considering me, like, one of them. And,
Come on.
And so, because they feel I'm set apart from them, then I'm, like, and I'm supplying knowledge, and I guess, like, the way that we receive education in our society, the fact that education is hierarchical is, like, really, really damaging to people actually learning and growing as human beings, because, like, I'm judging you because I'm supplying you with knowledge that you didn't have and that you maybe didn't want but that you should have, because, like, the world could be a much better place, and it would be if people were more interested in educating themselves rather than just swallowing whatever was part of indoctrination, right? So I was thinking that, like, well, I mean, I've definitely been, you know, in situations where I was the older person, or I was, like, the authority on the subject. Like, I was the authority on drugs, which that's kind of what, like, spurred this, because it was an Adam Runs Everything, and he was running drugs, and it was great, but, like, oh, like, if I had my together, like, I would be, like, picking apart Dare like you would not believe. Like, I collect Dare shirts, like, I'm trying to get them out of circulation, because it's such a faulty idea, and, like, statistically among my peer group, like, Dare educated kids, like, turned to drugs regularly, and, like, that increased with each generation, and what changed was Dare became, like bigger. The Dare box grew. You know, there was Just Say No, and it was like a shadow box, and then there's Dare, and it's like a suitcase, and then, like, the next year Dare is, like, a bigger suitcase, and then the next year Dare is, like, a big box, and like, I mean, I have always been friends with kids older and younger than me, and so I have a perspective of, like, how things are changing for the worse, or just, like, being able to examine that, because somebody'd be like, oh yeah, you know, Mindy, you were talking about Dare, well, now I'm doing Dare, and it's like, oh right, you are in that grade, cool, well, what's it like? And, like, my brother did Dare, and it was a fucking trunk, like a huge trunk that you could put a body in, of all of the things that they had to show and tell about how to do drugs. So, like, you know, and do I have, like, bias? Like, I don't think so, because I was absolutely adamant about Dare being a bad idea before he, like, started dealing drugs and, you know, had to smoke crack at gunpoint and, you know, test things for people. It was just, like, it's a matter of perspective, and because I was older and experienced these things, like, at their advent, I had the perspective of how something has evolved, and it didn't seem to be this, like, throwaway thing. People appreciated my perspective, and what I was trying to get at was that, like, okay, yes, you set a judge ahead of like ahead of yourself, in front of yourself, higher than yourself, and like you view someone as a teacher, then you put them on like a sort of pedestal, and like you can feel like you're being talked down to. Well, I think that the reason I was so well received is because I was like, for the most part, perceived as from a different age group than the one that would actually be my age peer group. And so it's like, either I'm really interesting because I seem to be like this really young person that's really hella smart, or I'm this old person that's like really, really interested in what kids are doing. And like, let's face it, I don't think that kids like really have people being interested in what they're doing, you know? Like, they must have appreciated the attention and the time that I was giving them. And yeah, appreciated an education. And I think it's like totally bizarre that people don't appreciate an education, because you legit have to pay for that. Like, you have to pay for education. And I'm just like, hey, here's what I know that makes my life as a human less like hell. Why don't you know it too? And like, the world will gradually become a better place. That's not happening, because people are like, well, I paid for my fancy education, and nothing that wasn't in the lesson plan is really going to interest me much. For the most part, people are like that. And so, that, right. But one of the other reasons that I'm sure it comes off as judgy rather than just like a teaching moment, or like, hey man, like, you know this, because anytime I am fun, having fun, being fun, teaching in a fun way, like edutainment, it's seen as flirty, flirtatious. And like, being that I have had a decade of being the sexually, perceivably sexually available object, because I've been sexually objectified for a decade, like, that has trained me to not be fun, trained me to have these gestures, this tone, these serious eyes, because I am not interested in you being interested in me because you want tail. And that's like, and I have to acknowledge that like by and large, a lot of people that I've like really like educated and helped and bettered, and like they've like let me in, and I've allowed them to evolve and be their better self or whatever, like, it has been because like sex was driving them and motivating them to give me that eye contact, that one-on-one time, to set aside that part of their schedule. It's because they wanted that from me. And it's not that they weren't listening, really. It's not that they weren't taking it away. It's the investment. And it's like, I want to make damn sure that ain't nobody hanging on my word that wants in my pants. Whether it educates them or not, fuck them, right? Like, that is the, like, it's serious, like, it's legitimately dangerous, you know? Like, I can't even, like, be myself. Like, even just, like, being happy, if I'm happy and cute, it's like, why do people think I'm young all the time? Because young people are not, like, burdened with the self-awareness to be withholding or less jubilant or joyful or less full of love or less expressive of love. They aren't burdened with that. And why are we burdened with that? Because for a decade I've been a sexual object. That's fucked up. Like, this patriarchal society, like, governs my thought process and my mannerisms, whether I'm even with a male or not. So, I just had, you know, that to say. And Walking Dead is starting now, so, you know, I should go. I digress. I'm, like, all worked up. I just want to, like, talk forever and really have to figure out how to, like, gear down. But thank you for watching. Leave your comments, like what you've perceived about education, or like informing your friends, or whatever, you know. Like, you know me, I have like a lot of fringe knowledge, and I have for a long time. So, what's your experience with that? And, you know, like mine, let's band together. And like, I would love to figure out a way that I come across as, you know, like, fun, without there being the safety of this screen, this camera, separating me from a world. Like, the only reason I can be myself sometimes online is because I feel that safety. No one's gonna be like, that girl, yummy, I wanna get with her, you know? And it's like the fucked upness of society just like really overwhelms me sometimes, and I just like really need to veg. So, love, light, bye.